You heartless scumbag! How dare you show your face here after what you did? The coffee cup flew through the air, narrowly missing Olivia Carter's head as she ducked instinctively. The scalding liquid splashed against the pristine white wall behind her, leaving a brown stain that seemed to mock the chaos unfolding in the upscale Manhattan office. She stood frozen, her worn messenger bag clutched against her chest like a shield, wondering how her first day as a delivery courier had gone so catastrophically wrong. The man hurling both insults and beverages was none other than Nathaniel Nate Sterling, the 34-year-old billionaire CEO of Sterling Innovations, famous for his cutting-edge technology and infamous for his merciless business tactics. His steel gray eyes narrowed as he stalked toward her, his custom Italian suit doing little to disguise the tightly coiled fury in his movements. I trusted you with confidential information, and you sold it to Vertex Corp without a second thought, he snarled, his voice dangerously low. Do you have any idea what you've done? Olivia's mouth opened and closed several times, her brain struggling to catch up with this bizarre turn of events. Mr. Sterling, I think there's been a terrible... Save it, he cut her off with a dismissive wave. Your little innocent act might work on others, but I've seen your true colors, Ms. Alvarez. Alvarez? But I'm not... Olivia tried again, pushing a strand of her unruly chestnut hair behind her ear. The intercom on his desk buzzed insistently. Mr. Sterling, the board members are waiting in the conference room for the quarterly presentation, a crisp female voice announced. Nate's jaw clenched as he checked his watch. This isn't over, he promised, his gaze pinning Olivia to the spot. Security will escort you out, but don't think for a second you've heard the last from me. As if on cue, two broad-shouldered men in dark suits materialized at the doorway. Olivia felt her face burning with equal parts confusion and indignation. This was supposed to be a simple delivery, drop off a package at Sterling Innovations, and continue with her route. Now she was being treated like some corporate spy. Mr. Sterling, please, she attempted one last time, desperation coloring her voice. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm just a courier. Whatever you think I did. Save your explanations for my lawyers, he interrupted coldly, straightening his tie as he strode toward the door. You'll need them. The security guards each took one of her arms, their grips firm but not painful, as they led her toward the elevator. Olivia's mind raced. She needed this job. After losing her position as a kindergarten teacher due to budget, cuts and struggling to make rent on her tiny apartment, she couldn't afford another setback. As the elevator doors closed on Nate's retreating figure, Olivia caught a final glimpse of his face. For just a moment, something flashed across his expression. Uncertainty, perhaps. But then, it was gone, replaced by the same cold mask of contempt. Outside the gleaming Sterling Tower, rain had begun to fall, the drops hitting the pavement in a rhythm that matched Olivia's pounding heart. She stood on the sidewalk, clutching her delivery receipt, unsigned, as pedestrians rushed past with umbrellas and raincoats. Her uniform was already soaked through, the company logo on her cap now drooping sadly against her forehead. Perfect, she muttered, fishing her phone from her pocket to call her supervisor. Just perfect. What she didn't see was Nate Sterling watching her from his corner office window, 40 stories above. His assistant, Vivian, stood beside him with a tablet in hand. Sir, I've just received the personnel file on Carmen Alvarez, Vivian said hesitantly. And I'm afraid there might have been a misunderstanding. Nate's eyes remained fixed on the bedraggled figure below. What kind of misunderstanding? Vivian turned the tablet toward him, displaying two photographs side by side. One showed the woman now trudging through the rain, while the other featured a similar-looking but distinctly different person. The woman you just confronted. She's not Carmen Alvarez. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Sterling felt something he rarely experienced in business. He had made a mistake. A colossal, possibly actionable mistake. "Find out who she is," he ordered, his voice tight. "And clear my schedule for tomorrow morning." As Olivia disappeared around the corner, neither of them could have predicted how their lives were about to become entangled in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. Olivia's apartment was more of a shoebox than a living space, a studio in Brooklyn with a temperamental radiator and a view of the brick wall next door. But tonight, it felt like a sanctuary, as she peeled off her damp clothes and wrapped herself in her threadbare but comforting robe. Her boss had been surprisingly understanding about the unsigned delivery receipt after she'd explained the situation, though his sympathy came with a warning. "Don't lose the Sterling account, Carter. We can't afford to." As if she had any control over that. She collapsed onto her futon, balancing a bowl of instant ramen on her knees as she scrolled through job listings on her tablet. Maybe it was time to consider a career change again. Something where angry billionaires didn't throw coffee at her head. The buzz of her apartment intercom made her jump, spilling broth onto her robe. "For the love of," she muttered, setting aside her dinner and pressing the intercom button. "Yes?" "Delivery for Olivia Carter," a bored voice announced. Frowning, she buzzed the delivery person in, quickly changing into sweatpants and an oversized NYU t-shirt, a relic from the college education that had left her with more debt than opportunities. A knock on her door moments later revealed a courier holding an elegant white box tied with a silver ribbon. "Sign here," he said, thrusting a digital pad at her. After the courier left, Olivia examined the package suspiciously. It was from Sterling Innovations. With cautious fingers, she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid to find a brand new smartphone, the latest Sterling model that wouldn't be released to the public for another 3 months, nestled in tissue paper. Beneath it was an envelope, containing a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. "Ms. Carter, I owe you a sincere apology for my inexcusable behavior this afternoon. There is no justification for how I treated you. Please accept this phone as a small token of my regret. I would appreciate the opportunity to apologize in person tomorrow at 9 a.m. A car will be waiting outside your building if you choose to. Accept. Nathaniel Sterling." Olivia stared at the note, then at the phone that probably cost more than 2 months of her rent. Her first instinct was to return it. She wasn't interested in being bought off. But she couldn't deny that a formal apology might help salvage her courier company's relationship with Sterling Innovations. Plus, she was curious about what had prompted such a dramatic case of mistaken identity. The next morning, she found herself in the back of a sleek black car with tinted windows, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned. A simple navy blue dress she reserved for job interviews and her cousin's wedding last year. The driver remained silent throughout the journey, and before she knew it, they were pulling up to Sterling Tower again. This time, instead of being directed to the mailroom, she was whisked up to the top floor in a private elevator. Vivian, whom she recognized as Nate's assistant from yesterday's debacle, greeted her with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ms. Carter, Mr. Sterling is expecting you. May I offer you coffee?" she asked, leading Olivia through a spacious reception area adorned with modern art pieces that probably cost more than Olivia's entire life savings. "No coffee, thank you," Olivia replied, suppressing a shudder at the memory of flying coffee cups. "Water would be fine." Vivian nodded, ushering her into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The view momentarily took Olivia's breath away. She could see Central Park, the Hudson River, and the sprawling city below, all bathed in morning sunlight. "Impressive, isn't it?" a deep voice said from behind her. Olivia turned to find Nate Sterling, watching her, his expression unreadable. Without the rage distorting his features, she could better appreciate why business magazines frequently featured him on their covers. He wore a charcoal suit that fit his athletic frame perfectly, and his dark hair was styled impeccably, but it was his eyes that caught her attention, intelligent and observant, with an intensity that made her feel as though he could see right through her carefully constructed composure. "Mr. Sterling," she acknowledged, straightening her shoulders. Please, call me Nate, he said, gesturing to the conference table. I appreciate you coming. They sat opposite each other, the polished table between them like a neutral zone. For a moment, silence hung in the air, neither quite knowing how to begin. I brought your phone, Olivia finally said, placing the unopened box on the table and sliding it toward him. It's very generous, but I can't accept it. Nate's eyebrows rose slightly. Most people would jump at a free prototype worth several $1,000s. I'm not most people, she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. And I don't need expensive gadgets as compensation for basic human decency. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. No, I'm beginning to see that you're not. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. Ms. Carter. Olivia, she corrected. Olivia, he amended. I behaved abominably yesterday. There's no excuse for it, but there is an explanation, if you're willing to hear it. She nodded, curiosity getting the better of her. The woman I mistook you for, Carmen Alvarez, was my personal assistant, before Vivian. She had access to highly sensitive information about a new technology we're developing. Last week, that information was leaked to our biggest competitor, and the digital trail led back to her access credentials. That doesn't explain why you thought I was her, Olivia pointed out. We can't possibly look that similar. Nate reached for a tablet and tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward her. This is Carmen Alvarez. Olivia stared at, the photo of a woman with similar height, build, and hair color to her own. There was a passing resemblance, but not enough to justify yesterday's confusion. You were wearing a cap, Nate explained, seemingly reading her thoughts. And I was predisposed to see what I expected to see. You mean you were blinded by rage? Olivia translated bluntly. To her surprise, he laughed, a rich, warm sound that transformed his face completely. Yes, exactly that. It's not my finest quality. Vivian entered with water for Olivia and coffee for Nate, then discreetly withdrew. Olivia took a sip, gathering her thoughts. So, you've apologized and I accept. Is that all? She asked, wondering why she felt a twinge of disappointment at the thought of this meeting ending so quickly. Actually, no, Nate replied, his expression turning serious again. I'd like to offer you a job. Olivia nearly choked on her water. Excuse me? I need someone trustworthy to help me identify how the security breach really happened, he explained. Someone outside my usual circles who can observe without preconceptions. Your background check shows you're intelligent, educated, and currently underemployed. Plus, you had the integrity to return a valuable prototype instead of accepting it. As a bribe. You ran a background check on me? Olivia asked incredulously. Nate had the grace to look slightly abashed. Standard procedure after yesterday's incident. And what makes you think I want to work for someone who throws coffee cups at people's heads? She challenged, though she couldn't deny a spark of interest at the prospect of using her brain for something more stimulating than navigating delivery routes. Double your current salary plus benefits, he offered. And I promise, no more projectiles. Their eyes locked across the table, a silent battle of wills. In that moment, something shifted between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that whatever happened next would be anything but simple. I'll need to think about it, Olivia said finally. Nate nodded, sliding a business card toward her. Take all the time you need, but not too much. I have a corporate mole to catch. As she left Sterling Tower for the second time in as many days, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just veered wildly off course. The question was whether this detour would lead to disaster or something unexpectedly wonderful. Neither of them noticed Vivian watching their interaction through the glass wall of the conference room, her expression calculating as she made a phone call to an unlisted number. It's me, she said quietly. We might have a problem. You took a job with the man who assaulted you with a beverage? Have you lost your mind? Olivia's best friend, Zoe Kim, gaped at her across their favorite corner table at Grind and Brew, the quirky little cafe where they met every Sunday for brunch. When you put it that way, it does sound crazy, Olivia admitted, stirring her latte absently. But it's triple my courier salary, Zoe. Triple, plus health insurance that actually covers more than just catastrophic injuries. Zoe, a freelance graphic designer with electric blue hair and more common sense than Olivia sometimes possessed, shook her head. Money isn't everything. What about your dignity? My dignity doesn't pay my student loans, Olivia countered. Besides, he apologized. Sincerely, I think. So what exactly will you be doing for the infamous Nathaniel Sterling? Zoe asked, her tone making it clear she still had reservations. Olivia hesitated. The job description Nate had sent over was deliberately vague. Special project consultant, with responsibilities including interdepartmental assessment and internal communications evaluation. She'd signed a confidentiality agreement before even getting the official offer letter. I'll be helping to identify some internal issues, she said carefully. It's temporary, just for a few months, and if it's terrible, I'll quit. Zoe studied her face for a moment, then sighed. There's something you're not telling me. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Is he as hot in person as he looks in those Forbes spreads? Zoe. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. That's not relevant. Your blush says otherwise, Zoe teased. Just promise me you'll be careful. Men like Sterling are used to getting whatever they want. Trust me, I'm the last thing he wants, Olivia assured her, though the memory of how his eyes had lingered on hers during their meeting made her wonder if that was entirely true. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of anxiety and excitement fluttering in Olivia's stomach. She'd splurged on a few new outfits, nothing fancy, just professional basics that wouldn't make her stand out among Sterling Innovation's sleek workforce. Standing before her bathroom mirror, she smoothed down her charcoal pencil skirt and adjusted the collar of her emerald blouse, a color Zoe insisted brought out the green flecks in her hazel eyes. You are not here to impress anyone, she told her reflection sternly. This is just a job, a very well-paying job. The now familiar black car delivered her to Sterling Tower, where a security badge bearing her name and photo was waiting. All areas access, the security guard noted with raised eyebrows as he handed it to her. You must be important. Or incredibly suspicious, Olivia muttered under her breath. Vivian was waiting when she stepped off the elevator, her smile as professionally distant as before. Good morning, Ms. Carter. Mr. Sterling asked me to give you a tour of the facilities before bringing you to your office. Office? Olivia echoed, having expected a cubicle at best. Vivian's smile tightened a fraction. Yes, adjacent to Mr. Sterling's suite. He wants you close. The tour revealed Sterling Innovations to be the tech paradise its reputation suggested. Open-concept workspaces filled with the industry's brightest minds. Labs where prototypes of gadgets that wouldn't hit the market for years were being developed. And common areas featuring everything from meditation pods to arcade games. Our company culture emphasizes both productivity and well-being, Vivian explained, as they passed a group of employees engaged in a spirited foosball match. Mr. Sterling believes happy employees are innovative employees. Interesting philosophy. For someone with a reputation as a corporate tyrant, Olivia observed. Vivian's step faltered slightly. Mr. Sterling expects excellence. Those who can't deliver often misinterpret his standards as tyranny. They arrived at a glass-walled office with a stunning view similar to the conference room where she'd met with Nate. A sleek desk, ergonomic chair, and the latest computer setup awaited her. Your login credentials are in the envelope on your wall. Desk, Vivian said. Mr. Sterling will meet you here at 10 to discuss your first assignment. Left alone, Olivia circled her new workspace in disbelief. From unemployed teacher to courier to whatever this was. She set down her bag and noticed a small plant on the corner of her desk, a peace lily in a simple ceramic pot with a note. Hard to kill, like a good apology. N. Despite herself, she smiled. At precisely 10 o'clock, Nate appeared, looking every inch the tech mogul in dark jeans and a tailored button-down with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Olivia quickly closed the company directory she'd been browsing and stood. "Please sit," he said, taking the chair opposite her desk rather than looming over her. "How does it feel so far?" "Surreal," she admitted. "I'm still not entirely convinced. This isn't an elaborate revenge plot for spilling coffee on your wall." His mouth quirked. If it helps, the wall needed repainting anyway. A brief silence fell between them. Not entirely uncomfortable, but charged with something Olivia couldn't quite name. "So," she said finally, "are you going to tell me what I'm really doing here? Because I'm pretty sure special project consultant isn't a real job title." Nate leaned forward, his playful demeanor shifting to something more serious. "What do you know about corporate espionage, Olivia?" "Only what I've seen in movies," she confessed, "which I assume is about as accurate as Hollywood's portrayal of teaching." "More accurate than you might think," he said grimly. Someone inside. "Sterling Innovations is selling our research to competitors. The leak I mentioned about Carmen Alvarez was a ruse. Her credentials were used, but we've confirmed she wasn't directly involved." "So you're looking for a mole," Olivia surmised. "But why involve me? Surely you have security personnel for this sort of thing." "I do," Nate acknowledged, "but they're known entities. The mole would be careful around them. You, however, are new, unknown. No one will suspect you're anything but a hasty hire to placate the woman I publicly humiliated." Olivia blinked. "You want me to be your spy?" "I prefer undercover consultant," he corrected with a slight smile. "Your job is simple. Observe, interact, report. No one knows why you're really here except me, Vivian, and now you." "Vivian knows?" Olivia asked, recalling the strange phone call she'd overheard at the end of their last meeting. "Of course. She's my right hand," Nate said, though something flickered in his eyes. "Why do you ask?" Olivia hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "Just a feeling. She doesn't seem to like me much." Nate chuckled. "Vivian doesn't like anyone much. She's professionally suspicious. It's why she's good at her job." He stood, straightening his cuffs. "You'll start by joining different departments for lunch this week. Research, development, marketing. Just chat, make friends. See if anyone asks questions they shouldn't or knows things they couldn't." As he moved toward the door, Olivia called after him. "What if I'm terrible at this? I'm not exactly James Bond material." He paused, looking back at her with an expression that made her heart skip, for reasons she didn't want to examine. "I have a feeling you're better at reading people than you think, Olivia Carter." His gaze softened. "Besides, no one suspects the kindergarten teacher." After he left, Olivia sank back into her chair, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The peace lily seemed to watch her mockingly from the corner of her desk. "Don't judge me," she told it. "You're just a plant." Her first lunch expedition was with the research team, a group of brilliant but socially awkward scientists who seemed more interested in debating the theoretical applications of quantum computing than grilling her about her sudden appearance. By Wednesday, she'd moved on to development, where she met Jackson Chen, a charming lead engineer who offered to show her the prototype lab off the record. "We're not supposed to bring outsiders in," he explained with a conspiratorial wink as he swiped his badge. "But technically, with that all-access pass of yours, you're not really an outsider, are you?" Warning bells rang in Olivia's mind. This was exactly the kind of behavior Nate had told her to watch for. Yet Jackson seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the technology, not secretive or suspicious. "Our quantum encryption algorithm is years ahead of anything on the market," he boasted as he showed her a device that looked like an ordinary router. "Once we crack the stability issues, Sterling Innovations will revolutionize data security." "Impressive," Olivia said, making a mental note to mention this encounter to Nate. How many people are working on this project? Just our core team, 5 engineers plus Sterling himself, Jackson replied. He's surprisingly hands-on for a CEO. As they exited the lab, Olivia nearly collided with Vivian, who was hurrying down the corridor with a tablet clutched to her chest. Ms. Carter, Vivian said coolly, her eyes flicking between Olivia and Jackson. I wasn't aware you had clearance for the prototype lab. That would be my fault, Jackson admitted sheepishly. Just giving the new girl the grand tour. How thoughtful, Vivian replied, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Mr. Sterling is looking for you, Ms. Carter. His office, immediately. As Jackson made himself scarce, Vivian stepped closer to Olivia. Be careful about the company you keep, Ms. Carter. Not everyone here has Sterling's best interests at heart. With that cryptic warning, she strode away, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Olivia watched her go, a chill running down her spine. Was Vivian warning her about Jackson, or about someone else entirely? And why did it feel like she'd just stumbled into a game where no one had bothered to explain the rules? With a deep breath, she headed toward Nate's office, unaware that this meeting would change the trajectory of their relationship in ways neither of them could predict. Nate's office was a study in controlled chaos. One wall covered entirely in digital screens displaying real-time data, another lined with books ranging from quantum physics to classical philosophy. The man himself stood with his back to the door, gazing out at the city sprawled beneath them as dusk approached, painting the skyline in hues of amber and gold. You wanted to see me? Olivia asked, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. He turned, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Vivian says you were in the prototype lab with Jackson Chen. I was gathering information like you asked, she replied, stepping fully into the office. Isn't that my job? Your job is to observe without drawing attention, Nate countered, moving toward his desk. The prototype lab has surveillance cameras. If our mole sees you taking special interest in our most sensitive projects, then they'll think exactly what you want them to think, Olivia interrupted. That I'm just a clueless outsider who doesn't know any better. She crossed her arms. Unless you're suggesting Jackson is your mole? Nate's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features before his composure returned. What makes you say that? He was eager to show me classified tech, for one thing. Olivia perched on the edge of a sleek leather chair. Though if he's trying to hide nefarious activities, touring restricted areas with a woman who has an all-access pass and reports directly to you seems like a poor strategy. A reluctant smile tugged at Nate's mouth. Point taken. Besides, she continued, warming to her analysis, he spoke about the quantum encryption project with genuine enthusiasm. In my experience, people who betray things they care about tend to overcompensate with criticism or maintain emotional distance. Jackson did neither. Nate studied her with newfound interest. Your psychological insights are surprisingly astute for a kindergarten teacher. 5-year-olds are just tiny humans with underdeveloped impulse control. Olivia shrugged. The same principles apply, just with more corporate jargon and fewer finger paints. He laughed then, a rich sound that transformed his face and sent an unexpected warmth coursing through her. When was the last time she'd made someone laugh like that? The realization that she enjoyed it, enjoyed his response to her, was unsettling. Touché, Ms. Carter, he conceded, leaning against his desk in a way that made his crisp shirt pull slightly across his shoulders. But my concern stands. We need to be strategic about where you focus your attention. Then brief me properly, she challenged. I can't navigate corporate politics and potential espionage without knowing the players and the stakes. Nate considered her for a long moment before nodding. Fair enough. He pressed a button on his desk, and the glass walls of his office instantly frosted over, ensuring privacy. What do you want to know? Everything, Olivia said simply, starting with what was actually stolen. For the next hour, Nate detailed the situation. Sterling Innovations was developing a breakthrough quantum encryption technology that would revolutionize data security. 3 weeks ago, technical specifications had been accessed and copied from their secure server using Vivian's predecessor's credentials. The following day, their chief competitor, Vertex Corp., suddenly changed directions on their own security product line, suggesting they now possess similar technology. The timing is too perfect to be coincidental, Nate explained. Someone gave them our research, saving them years of development. And millions in costs, Olivia added, thinking aloud. Who stands to benefit most from that kind of leak? Anyone, with Vertex connections or stock options, Nate said grimly. Or someone with a grudge against me personally. Do you make a habit of creating enemies? She asked, only half joking. His expression darkened. Success attracts jealousy. And my methods haven't always been diplomatic. Something in his tone made Olivia look up sharply. Is that what happened with Carmen Alvarez, the woman you mistook me for? Nate's jaw tightened. Carmen was different. I trusted her. The raw emotion in his voice suggested more than a professional relationship. And Olivia felt an irrational pang of, what? Not jealousy, surely. She barely knew this man. Were you and she... The question escaped before she could stop it. Involved? Nate finished, his gaze direct. Briefly. It ended when I discovered she was feeding information to a tech blogger about our projects. Not the encryption data, he clarified, but smaller breaches, product features, release dates. And now her credentials were used for something much bigger, Olivia mused. Convenient scapegoat. Exactly my thinking, Nate agreed. Someone is exploiting our history to divert suspicion. Their eyes met across the space between them, and something electric passed through the air. They were thinking in sync, building on each other's insights, in a way that felt strangely intimate for a professional discussion. The moment was broken by a soft knock on the door. Nate pressed the button again, and the glass cleared to reveal Vivian standing outside. Her expression, unreadable. Mr. Sterling, the investors from Singapore are waiting in conference room A, she announced as she entered. Her gaze flicked coolly toward Olivia. I can brief Ms. Carter on the Henderson proposal while you attend the meeting. That won't be necessary, Nate replied. Olivia will accompany me to the investor meeting. Both women looked at him in surprise. Sir, that's highly unusual for someone so new, Vivian objected. Exactly, Nate said with a decisive nod. I want to see how our potential partners react to an unknown element. Their body language might reveal which ones have been approached by Vertex. It was a flimsy justification, and all three of them knew it. But Nate was already gathering his tablet and jacket, clearly expecting no further argument. We'll discuss the Henderson proposal tomorrow, he told Vivian, who pressed her lips into a thin line but nodded. As they walked toward the conference room, Olivia leaned closer to Nate. You know she thinks we're sleeping together now, right? Nate nearly missed a step, his composure slipping momentarily. I beg your pardon? Bringing your new special consultant to a high-level investor meeting? Olivia whispered. There's only one conclusion people will draw, and it's not that I'm your undercover corporate detective. A flush crept up his neck. That's not... I didn't intend... Relax, she said, surprised to find herself enjoying his discomfort. It might work to our advantage. People are careless around those they underestimate, and nothing gets you underestimated faster than being dismissed as the boss's latest fling. Nate's eyes widened, then narrowed thoughtfully. That's... actually brilliant. I have my moments, she replied dryly. Just don't expect me to fetch your coffee or laugh at your jokes. My jokes are objectively funny, he protested as they reached the conference room door. I'll be the judge of that, Olivia retorted, then fell silent as Nate transformed before Her eyes, shoulders squaring, expression sharpening into the confident mask of Nathaniel Sterling, tech visionary and business titan. The meeting proved more interesting than Olivia had anticipated. The Singaporean investors were backing Sterling's quantum encryption project, and several seemed noticeably uncomfortable when Nate casually mentioned accelerating the timeline due to competitive considerations. One investor in particular, a sleek woman named Mei Lin, asked pointed questions about their security protocols that seemed designed to evaluate vulnerability rather than protection. When Nate stepped away to speak privately with the lead investor, May approached Olivia at the refreshment table. "You're new," she observed, her accent slight but melodic. "Nathaniel doesn't usually bring unfamiliar faces to these meetings." "I'm a special project consultant," Olivia replied with practiced vagueness, selecting a canapé she had no intention of eating. Her appetite had disappeared the moment this elegant, shrewd woman had fixed her attention on her. "How special?" May asked with a knowing smile that made Olivia's skin crawl. "Nathaniel has always had an eye for talent." Before Olivia could respond, Nate materialized at her side, his hand coming to rest lightly on the small of her back. The touch, though, clearly theatrical for their audience, sent an involuntary shiver up her spine. "I see you've met Olivia," he said to May, his tone pleasant, but his eyes sharp. "She's helping us identify vulnerabilities in our organizational structure." "Fascinating," May replied, her gaze calculating as it moved between them. "I look forward to seeing the results of your collaboration." After the investors departed, Nate's hand dropped away from Olivia's back, leaving a phantom warmth she tried to ignore. "That was educational," she said as they returned to his office. Mei Lin practically radiated suspicion. "She's always been ambitious," Nate agreed, loosening his tie as the office door closed behind them. "And she has connections at Vertex, college. Roommate is their CFO." "Convenient," Olivia murmured. "Too convenient, perhaps," Nate acknowledged. "But she doesn't have direct access to our servers." "Someone inside does, though," Olivia said. "Someone who knew exactly what to look for and how to disguise their tracks." She hesitated. "Have you considered that it might be Vivian?" Nate finished, surprising her. "Of course. I consider everyone, Olivia. Trust is a luxury I can't afford." The sadness underlying his matter-of-fact statement caught her off guard. What must it be like to live that way, constantly vigilant, never certain of anyone's loyalty? "That sounds exhausting," she said softly. Something vulnerable flashed across his face before he turned away. "It's the cost of success." "Is it worth it?" she asked, the question more personal than she'd intended. When he looked back at her, the raw honesty in his eyes made her heart constrict. "I used to think so." The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Olivia became acutely aware of how alone they were, how the city lights cast intimate shadows across his office, how easily she could step forward and... Her phone buzzed loudly, shattering the tension. A text from Zoe. "Emergency movie night needed. Ben broke up with me. Ice cream required." "I have to go," Olivia said, both relieved and disappointed by the interruption. "Friend crisis." Nate nodded, professional distance reasserting itself. "Of course. We'll continue tomorrow." As she gathered her things, he added, "By the way, you were excellent today. Natural, observant." "High praise from the corporate tyrant," she teased, trying to recapture their earlier ease. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Don't believe everything you hear about me, Olivia." "I rarely believe anything until I see it for myself," she replied honestly. Later that night, after consoling Zoe through half a tub of Rocky Road and a tearful rewatch of her friend's favorite rom-com, Olivia lay awake in her tiny apartment, replaying the day's events. The case was intriguing, challenging her mind in ways her recent jobs hadn't. But more unsettling was her growing awareness of Nathaniel Sterling as more than just her enigmatic employer. She'd taken this position for the money, for the opportunity to use her brain again. Developing inconvenient. Feelings for a billionaire with trust issues and a target on his back hadn't been part of the plan. What she didn't know was that across town, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Nate was having similar thoughts as he reviewed security footage from the investor meeting, his attention repeatedly drawn to Olivia's animated expressions as she engaged with people who had intimidated seasoned executives. "This is a complication I don't need," he told his empty living room, closing the laptop with more force than necessary. But as he moved toward his bedroom, he found himself pausing at his home office to check one more detail: the background screening he'd run on Olivia Carter before hiring her. Nothing suspicious had surfaced initially, but now, with new suspicions forming, he decided a deeper investigation was warranted, because the most dangerous possibility of all was the one he'd been avoiding. What if the woman who had so quickly begun to breach his defenses was actually the perfect plant? What if Olivia Carter wasn't who she appeared to be at all? The rain pounded against the windows of Sterling Tower with apocalyptic fury, turning the morning commute into a citywide nightmare of delayed trains and flooded streets. By the time Olivia squelched into the office, her hair was plastered to her skull, despite her umbrella's valiant efforts, and her carefully chosen outfit, a burgundy dress that had cost a week's courier salary, clung uncomfortably to her skin. "You look like you went swimming fully clothed," remarked Jackson Chen, appearing beside her in the elevator with 2 steaming cups of coffee. He offered one to her with a sympathetic smile. "Hazelnut latte, right? I noticed that's what you ordered at lunch the other day." Olivia accepted the coffee gratefully, trying not to read too much into his thoughtfulness. Was this normal colleague behavior, or was he trying to get close to her for more nefarious reasons? After yesterday's revelations, everyone had become a potential suspect in her mind. "Thanks, Jackson. I'm starting to think I should keep a complete change of clothes here," she said, taking a sip and sighing as the warmth spread through her. "Most of us do," he confided. "There's a reason the staff locker rooms have those fancy shower stalls. Sterling believes in preparedness." The elevator doors opened on her floor, but Jackson held them with his hand. "By the way, a few of us are getting drinks after work at the Greystone. Nothing fancy, just unwinding. You should join us." Olivia hesitated. A social gathering could be the perfect opportunity to observe employees outside the structured environment of the office. Or it could be a trap. "I'll try to make it," she hedged. Jackson's smile widened. "Great. 7th floor, R&D team. We head out around 6. The doors closed on his friendly wave. Shaking off her paranoia along with raindrops, Olivia made her way to her office, only to find Nate standing by her desk, examining a small potted cactus that hadn't been there yesterday. Unlike her, he appeared immaculate in a charcoal suit that complemented his broad shoulders, not a hair out of place. The contrast made her acutely self-conscious of her bedraggled state. "Good morning," she said, clutching her damp coat closer, as if it could somehow disguise the fact that she resembled a drowned rat. Nate turned, his eyes widening momentarily at her appearance, before his expression smoothed into professional neutrality. "Olivia, I see the weather caught you." "That's one way of putting it," she replied, setting down her bag and coffee. "What's with the cactus?" "I thought the peace lily could use company," he said, the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "This one's even harder to kill. It thrives in harsh conditions." The metaphor wasn't lost on her. "Are you implying I create harsh conditions, Mr. Sterling?" "Not at all," he replied, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected warmth. "I'm suggesting you have an admirable talent for adaptation." Something fluttered in her chest at his words, a dangerous something she quickly suppressed. "Thank you for the plant," she said briskly, hanging up her wet coat. "Was there something specific you needed this morning?" Nate's expression shifted, from open to guarded so quickly that she might have imagined the change if she hadn't been watching carefully. Yes, actually. My security team has completed a deeper background investigation on everyone with access to the compromised servers. Olivia's pulse quickened. And I'd like you to review the findings, he said, placing a tablet on her desk. Fresh eyes might spot patterns we've missed. She glanced at the tablet, then back at him, suspicion blooming. You ran a deeper check on me too, didn't you? The silence that followed was confirmation enough. Of course you did, she said quietly, a weight settling in her stomach. Find anything interesting in my sordid past as an elementary educator? Perhaps a suspicious pattern of overdue library books, or my radical stance on finger painting techniques? Olivia, he began, his tone conciliatory. Save it, she interrupted, surprising herself with the hurt coloring her voice. It's fine. I understand. Trust is a luxury you can't afford, right? She reached for the tablet, but he caught her wrist, his touch sending an unwelcome current through her rain-chilled skin. What I found, he said deliberately, was a woman who donated half her teacher's salary to her school's supply fund, who spent weekends tutoring kids who couldn't afford extra help, who was let go despite stellar performance evaluations because of budget cuts, not incompetence. Olivia swallowed hard, unnerved by how thoroughly he'd investigated her life. Congratulations on your stalking skills. I'm trying to apologize, Nate said, frustration edging his voice. Yes, I checked your background. I check everyone's. But what I found only confirmed my initial assessment. You're trustworthy, Olivia. More so than most people I've encountered in business. The sincerity in his eyes made it difficult to maintain her indignation. With a sigh, she pulled her wrist free. Fine. Apology accepted. Now, what exactly am I looking for in these reports? Relief crossed his features as he pulled up a file on the tablet. Anything unusual? Unexplained absences, sudden expenditures, changes in behavior. There are 15 key personnel with the necessary access level. Olivia nodded, slipping into analytical mode as she scanned the first profile. I'll need context for some of this. Normal spending patterns, typical work habits. I've arranged for you to have temporary access to HR records and expense reports, Nate explained. Just use your standard login. And Olivia? He paused at the door. Thank you for understanding. After he left, she sank into her chair, torn between professional interest in the challenge before her and personal discomfort at the boundaries being blurred. This job was supposed to be straightforward. Find the corporate spy, collect her generous paycheck, and move on with her life. But nothing about Nathaniel Sterling or her growing feelings toward him was straightforward. She spent the morning immersed in personnel files, creating a detailed spreadsheet of patterns and anomalies. By lunchtime, her hair had dried into wavy disarray, but her focus was too intense to care. 3 names had risen to the top of her suspicion list. Vivian, Chen, whose brother's startup had recently received mysterious funding. Howard Griffith, the network security chief whose divorce had triggered unusually large cash withdrawals. And Mei Lin, whose investment firm had quietly increased its holdings in Vertex Corp while publicly backing Sterling Innovations. The corporate world was a tangled web of competing interests and hidden agendas, far more complex than the straightforward politics of an elementary school. Yet Olivia found herself enjoying the mental challenge, piecing together the puzzle one data point at a time. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. She looked up to find a young woman holding a garment bag. Ms. Carter? This was delivered for you, the assistant said, hanging the bag on her coat rack. Puzzled, Olivia unzipped it to reveal a simple but elegant emerald sheath dress, accompanied by a note in now familiar handwriting. In case the rain ruined more than just your morning. Heat rushed to her cheeks. The gesture was thoughtful, but presumptuous. And how had he known her size? Then again, after his thoroughness in background checking, she shouldn't be surprised. Her warring emotions must have shown on her face because a voice from the doorway said, "It's not a bribe or an expectation, just a practical solution." Nate stood there, looking infuriatingly composed. "You mentioned keeping a change of clothes. Here, consider it a head start on your emergency wardrobe." "You have an odd definition of practical," Olivia replied, running her fingers over the fine fabric. "This probably costs more than my monthly rent." "It's just a dress," he said with a casual shrug that suggested he genuinely didn't understand why it might make her uncomfortable. "No, it's not just a dress," she countered, turning to face him fully. "It's a power move. You making decisions about my appearance, spending money on me that creates an imbalance." She took a steadying breath. "I appreciate the thought, Nate, but I can buy my own clothes, even if they're not designer labels." Instead of the defensive reaction she expected, his expression softened with what looked remarkably like respect. "You're right. I overstepped. I'm not accustomed to people refusing my gestures." "Well, get used to it," she said, though without real heat. "I'm not here to be impressed by your wealth or power." "Clearly," he said with a rueful smile, "it's refreshing." An awkward silence fell between them, broken when Olivia remembered her findings. "I have 3 prime suspects," she said, gesturing to her spreadsheet, "though I'll need more information to narrow it down further." Grateful for the return to professional territory, Nate moved closer to examine her work. "Impressive analysis, but you've missed something with Howard Griffith." "What's that?" she asked, frowning at the security chief's profile. "His divorce was a cover story," Nate explained. "He's actually been working undercover with the FBI's cybercrime division, investigating a separate issue. The cash withdrawals were for confidential informants." Olivia blinked. "You might have mentioned that earlier." "Need-to-know basis," he replied with a slight smirk. "I needed to see if you'd identify him as suspicious on your own." "So you were testing me," she realized, irritation flaring again. "Any other little trials I should know about?" "Just one," Nate said, his expression growing serious. "I've arranged for a false information leak today. Something significant but not damaging. A product feature we're already planning to announce next month. Only 5 people have been given this information, each a slightly different version. If it reaches Vertex, we'll know exactly who transmitted it." "A canary trap," Olivia murmured, impressed despite herself. "Clever. Effective if implemented correctly," he agreed. "Which brings me to tonight's assignment. I need you at the Greystone for drinks with the R&D team." Surprise flickered through her. "You know about that?" "Jackson Chen reports directly to me," Nate said. "The social gathering was my idea, though the invitation to you was his own initiative." Something like displeasure crossed his features at this admission. "So I'm supposed to, what, ply them with alcohol and listen for slips about your fake product feature?" Olivia asked skeptically. "Essentially, yes." He straightened, adjusting his cuffs in a gesture she'd come to recognize as a nervous habit. "I'd go myself, but my presence would change the dynamic. Plus, you probably don't socialize with the commoners?" she teased. To her surprise, a flush crept up his neck. "I maintain professional boundaries. It's simpler that way." The vulnerability in that admission caught her off guard. How lonely it must be at the top of his empire, unable to trust anyone, always maintaining distance. For the first time, she saw Nathaniel Sterling not as the arrogant CEO who'd thrown coffee at her, but as a man trapped by his own success. "I'll go," she said more gently, "but I'm wearing my own clothes, wrinkles and all." His smile was genuine, this time. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Olivia Carter." The Greystone was an upscale bar with industrial chic aesthetics, exposed brick walls, copper fixtures, and intimate lighting that flattered everyone. By the time Olivia arrived, The Sterling Innovations Group had claimed a corner section of plush leather couches. Jackson waved her over enthusiastically. "You made it!" he exclaimed, making room beside him. "Everyone, this is Olivia, Nate's new special project consultant." The way he emphasized special made her inwardly cringe, confirming her earlier suspicion that office gossip had indeed cast her as Nate's latest conquest. Still, she smiled politely as Jackson introduced the team. Aiko from Quantum Algorithms, Derek from Hardware Integration, Madison from Software Security, and Pavel from Theoretical Applications. "So what exactly does a special project consultant do?" Madison asked, her tone friendly, but her eyes sharp behind stylish glasses. "Besides looking good in the executive suite?" Olivia accepted a glass of wine from a passing server, buying time to craft her response. "I evaluate organizational vulnerabilities," she said, which was technically true. "My background in education gives me a unique perspective on human systems." "Education?" Derek echoed, his brow furrowing. "Like corporate training?" "Elementary education," Olivia clarified, noting the surprise that rippled through the group. "Children and corporations have more in common than you might think. Complex social hierarchies, territorial disputes, and occasional tantrums when things don't go their way." Pavel laughed, a booming sound that drew glances from nearby tables. "This I like. Finally, someone who sees the truth of corporate America. Tell me, teacher, have you given Sterling a timeout yet for his famous temper?" The group's laughter had an edge to it, the relieved mirth of employees who rarely get to joke about their intimidating boss. Olivia smiled non-committally, filing away this insight into how Nate was perceived by his team. "Seriously, though," Aiko interjected, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "How does someone go from teaching kids to working directly with one of the most demanding CEOs in tech?" "Coffee," Olivia answered truthfully, enjoying the confused looks her response generated. Or more specifically, having it thrown at me in a case of mistaken identity. She shared a carefully edited version of her first encounter with Nate, playing up the comedic elements while omitting any mention of corporate espionage. By the end, she had the entire group captivated. "That's the most Sterling story I've ever heard," Derek said, shaking his head in amazement. "Blow up at someone, realize he's wrong, then hire them instead of just apologizing like a normal person." "He's not big on admitting mistakes," Madison agreed. "But when he does recognize one, he goes overboard making it right. Like with Project Lazarus," Jackson added, then stopped abruptly as Aiko shot him a warning glance. Olivia pretended not to notice the slip, though her internal radar pinged loudly. "Speaking of projects," she said casually, "I heard a rumor about some revolutionary haptic feedback feature for the next-gen phones. Something about texture simulation?" The reaction was immediate and telling. Jackson and Pavel exchanged surprised looks, while Madison's expression shuddered completely. Most interesting was Aiko, who seemed genuinely confused. "Where did you hear that?" Madison asked, too casually. Olivia shrugged. "Around the office. Is it true?" "Half true," Jackson replied before Madison could stop him. "We're working on haptic technology, but the texture simulation is still theoretical. Right, Pavel?" The Russian engineer nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, many technical hurdles still, but very exciting potential." Their conversation flowed to safer topics after that, but Olivia had gathered what she needed. Madison's discomfort suggested she might have received one version of Nate's false leak, while Aiko's confusion indicated she hadn't been included in the information circle at all. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself genuinely enjoying the group's company. These were brilliant minds working on cutting-edge technology, their passion evident in the way they debated theoretical applications and shared stories of experimental mishaps. It made the prospect of one of them being a corporate spy all the more disturbing. Around 10, as the gathering began to disperse, Jackson offered to share a car service with her. Your place is on my way home, he explained, his smile friendly, but his eyes perhaps lingering a beat too long on hers. Thanks, but I'm actually meeting someone for a nightcap, she lied smoothly, uncomfortable with the thought of him knowing where she lived. Jackson's disappointment was palpable. Another time, then. He hesitated, then added, You know, we were all skeptical when Sterling brought you in so suddenly, but you're not what we expected. What did you expect? She asked, genuinely curious. Someone more... He searched for the right word. Corporate. Sterling's previous consultants have been efficiency experts looking for departments to downsize, or industry spies evaluating which projects to prioritize. And what do you think I am? Olivia challenged, watching his expression carefully. Jackson smiled enigmatically. I think you're exactly what Nathaniel Sterling needs, even if he doesn't know it yet. Before she could respond to that loaded statement, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Report to my penthouse. Car waiting outside. And her heart stuttered at the imperious tone and implication. His penthouse? At this hour? Everything okay? Jackson asked, noting her expression. Fine, she said quickly, gathering her purse. Just my friend reminding me about our plans. Outside, she spotted the familiar black car idling at the curb. As she slid into the back seat, her mind raced with possibilities. Had something happened? With the investigation? Was she being summoned for a debriefing? Or was this something more personal? The car glided through the rainy city streets toward the Upper East Side, eventually pulling up to one of those exclusive buildings with a discreet doorman and no visible signage. She was escorted to a private elevator that opened directly into a stunning penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering Manhattan skyline. Nate stood by a wall of glass, silhouetted against the city lights, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He'd discarded his suit jacket and tie, and rolled up his sleeves, giving him a more approachable appearance that somehow made him even more attractive. I got your text, Olivia said, stepping onto the gleaming hardwood floor. What's so urgent it couldn't wait until morning? He turned, and the intensity in his gaze sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The trap worked, he said without preamble. Someone took the bait. Olivia moved closer, professional curiosity momentarily overriding her awareness of the intimate setting. Which version leaked? Madison Shaw's, he replied, watching her reaction closely. The haptic texture simulation specifics were transmitted to a Vertex engineer via an encrypted messaging app 30 minutes ago. Madison, Olivia repeated, thinking back to the woman's reaction at the bar. She seemed cautious when the topic came up, but not guilty. Good actors often make the best spies, Nate said darkly, taking a sip of his drink. We've mirrored her devices remotely, but I wanted your impression of her from tonight before we proceed with confronting her. Olivia frowned, something about the situation niggling at her intuition. It feels too neat, she said slowly. If Madison is savvy enough to be selling your secrets, why would she transmit information immediately after it was discussed in a social setting? That's amateur hour. Unless she panicked, Nate suggested. Thought you might be onto her. Maybe, Olivia conceded, though she remained unconvinced. Or maybe someone wants you to think it's Madison. Nate's eyes sharpened with interest. Explain. What if someone else from the group overheard our conversation and used it as cover to transmit Madison's version of the leak? Olivia proposed, thinking aloud. Frame her while creating reasonable doubt about their own involvement. That would require access to her devices or accounts, Nate pointed out. Which network security might have, Olivia countered. Or another, engineer with the right skills. Nate set down his glass, moving closer until they were separated by mere inches. The subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, made it difficult for Olivia to maintain her professional focus. You think it's a double bluff? He said, his voice low and intimate in the quiet apartment. Clever. And exactly why I needed your perspective. Is that the only reason you called me here? The question slipped out before she could stop it, hanging in the air between them like a challenge. Nate's eyes darkened as they searched hers. What if it wasn't? The atmosphere shifted, charged with possibility. Olivia was acutely aware of their isolation, of how easy it would be to close the distance between them, to see if his lips tasted as good as they looked. For a breathless moment, she thought he might do exactly that. His gaze dropped to her mouth, his body inclined infinitesimally toward hers. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment with its harsh electronic intrusion. Nate stepped back, the spell broken as he glanced at the screen. It's my security team. I should take this. Olivia nodded, using the reprieve to collect herself. What was she thinking? Getting involved with Nate would be catastrophically unprofessional, not to mention emotionally reckless. He was her employer, a man with trust issues, and enough baggage to fill his private jet. Yet as she watched him pace by the windows, speaking in terse commands to his team, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. Behind his ruthless facade was a brilliant mind, unexpected kindness, and a vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to glimpse. "They've found something on Madison's cloud backup," Nate announced as he ended the call. "Encrypted communications going back months recently. Deleted but recoverable." "That's definitive," Olivia acknowledged, though something still felt off about the whole situation. "We'll confront her tomorrow," Nate decided. "I want you there." Olivia nodded, suddenly exhausted by the day's emotional and intellectual gymnastics. "I should go," she said, gathering her purse. "It's late." Nate studied her for a long moment, as if weighing a decision. "Stay," he said finally, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "Not for anything. Just, it's pouring again, and my guest room is more comfortable than any taxi ride in this weather." The offer was tempting, not least because it would allow her more time to observe him in his natural habitat. But the undefined tension between them made accepting too dangerous. "I appreciate the offer," she said gently. "But I think we both know that would complicate things. And this situation is complicated enough already." Something like disappointment flickered across his features before he nodded. "You're right, of course. The car will take you home." As she turned to leave, he called after her. "Olivia." She paused, looking back at him silhouetted against the cityscape. "Thank you. For your insights tonight. For everything, really." The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. A recognition that for all his wealth and power, Nathaniel Sterling was fundamentally alone. Until, perhaps, now. "You're welcome," she replied softly, then stepped into the elevator before she could change her mind. In the descending car, watching raindrops trace paths down the tinted windows, Olivia confronted an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere between coffee cups and corporate espionage, she'd begun to fall for the complicated, brilliant man she was supposed to be merely assisting. And if Madison was indeed the mole, their professional connection would soon come to its natural conclusion. The thought brought none of the relief it should have. Instead, she found herself hoping, against all logic and self-preservation instincts, that the mystery might linger a little longer, keeping her in Nate's orbit just a bit more time. What she couldn't know was that in his penthouse above the city, Nate Sterling stood watching the taillights of her departing car, wrestling with his own unexpected emotions. For the first time in years, he'd found someone who challenged him, who saw beyond his fortune and reputation to the man beneath. Someone he was beginning to trust implicitly, and that terrified him more than any corporate espionage ever could. The morning of Madison Shaw's scheduled confrontation arrived with clear skies that belied the storm brewing inside Sterling Tower. Olivia arrived early, determined to review the evidence one final time before accusations were formally leveled. Something about the situation still troubled her. It was too neat, too convenient. She found Nate already in the conference room, tie askew and dark circles under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as poorly as she had. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting, setting a cup of coffee in front of him. The good stuff from the artisanal cafe across the street, not the office swill. "Your flattery needs work," he replied, though gratitude flickered in his eyes as he took the coffee. "I was up all night reviewing Madison's communications." "And?" Olivia prompted, settling into the chair beside him. "And they're damning," he admitted, sliding a tablet toward her. "Encrypted messages, suspicious fund transfers, meeting schedules that align with Vertex executives' travel patterns." Olivia examined the evidence, her unease growing. It was comprehensive. Too comprehensive, perhaps. "It's perfect," she murmured. "Perfect," Nate echoed, frowning. "Perfect evidence rarely exists in real life," she explained, scrolling through the files. "People make mistakes, leave gaps. This is a setup," Nate finished, his eyes widening with realization. "Someone wanted us to find this." The conference room door burst open before Olivia could respond. Vivian entered, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, clutching a stack of papers. "Sir, we have a problem," she announced, barely acknowledging Olivia's presence. Madison Shaw's credentials were compromised. Someone used a keylogger to access her accounts. Nate's posture shifted instantly from exhaustion to alertness. "When?" "3 weeks ago," Vivian replied, spreading the papers on the table. "Its security just discovered the breach this morning while preparing for the confrontation. Someone with administrative access planted monitoring software on her devices." Olivia leaned forward, pieces clicking into place. "So Madison isn't the mole, but someone wanted us to think she was," Nate said grimly. "Someone who knew about our trap and used it to misdirect us." The implication hung heavy in the air. Only a handful of people had been aware of the false information leak: Nate, Olivia, Vivian, and the security chief. Nate's phone chimed with a text. His expression darkened as he read it. "Madison Shaw just tried to access the building and was denied entry. Security reports she's creating a scene in the lobby." "You locked her out based on fabricated evidence," Olivia realized. "That's going to be a PR nightmare, among other problems," Nate agreed, already moving toward the door. "Vivian, have security bring Ms. Shaw to my office, discreetly." "Sir, is that wise?" Vivian questioned. "If she's been compromised." "She's the victim here," Nate cut her off sharply. "Fix this, now." As Vivian departed with obvious reluctance, Olivia studied Nate with newfound appreciation. Despite the evidence against Madison, he was willing to admit the possibility of error, a significant evolution from the man who'd thrown coffee at her head just 2 weeks ago. "What are you thinking?" she asked, recognizing the intensity in his gaze that signaled his mind was racing. "I'm thinking we've been played," he replied. "The real mole must be someone with high-level security clearance, someone close enough to know about our investigation." "Someone like Vivian?" Olivia suggested carefully. Nate's jaw tightened. "I've trusted her for years." "Sometimes the people closest to us are in the best position to betray us," Olivia said, gently. His eyes met hers, vulnerable for a fleeting moment before his walls came back up. "I need evidence, not speculation." "Then let's get some," she replied, a plan forming. "But we'll need Madison's help." 30 minutes later, an indignant Madison Shaw sat across from them in Nate's office, her arms crossed defensively. "Let me get this straight," she said, eyes narrowed with justified anger. "Someone framed me as a corporate spy. You believed it, locked me out of the building, and now you want my help catching the real culprit?" "That about sums it up," Nate admitted, making no excuses. "I made a mistake, Ms. Shaw, and I apologize. But right now, we have a common enemy who's willing to sacrifice your career to protect themselves." Madison's expression remained stony. "Why should I help you?" Because you're brilliant and we need you, Olivia interjected. And because whoever did this violated your privacy, stole your identity, and tried to destroy everything you've worked for. Don't you want payback? A reluctant smile tugged at Madison's lips. When you put it that way. She leaned forward. What's the plan? The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Madison would return to work, seemingly cleared of suspicion, but under close monitoring. Meanwhile, they would leak a new piece of information, this time about Sterling Innovations supposedly abandoning the quantum encryption project due to insurmountable technical challenges. Only Madison, Nate, Olivia, and Vivian would know the truth. The project was actually ahead of schedule. If Vivian is our mole, she'll transmit the false information to Vertex, Olivia explained in the privacy of Nate's office after Madison had left. Their stock will rise on news of our supposed failure, creating a paper trail. And if she's innocent? Nate challenged, clearly still struggling with the possibility of his trusted assistant's betrayal. Then we'll know it's someone else, Olivia acknowledged. Either way, we'll have answers. They spent the rest of the day implementing their plan, carefully orchestrating a heated argument in the prototype lab about project viability that would be visible on security cameras. By evening, the stage was set. All they could do was wait. Come to dinner with me, Nate said unexpectedly as they gathered their things to leave. Olivia looked up in surprise. Is that wise with everything happening? Probably not, he admitted with a wry smile. But I'm tired of making the wise choice. Just dinner, Olivia. Away from here. Away from all of this. The sincerity in his voice broke through her hesitation. Just dinner, she agreed. But we're going somewhere normal people eat. No private rooms, no $100 appetizers. His smile widened. I know just the place. Just the place turned out to be a tiny Italian restaurant in the West Village. Family-owned and delightfully unpretentious. Nate, dressed down in jeans and a simple button-down, looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him as he led her to a corner table. How do you know about this place? She asked, genuinely curious. It hardly seemed like the habitat of a tech billionaire. I worked here in college, he admitted, surprising her. Washing dishes. The owner, Giuseppe, gave me my first business loan when banks laughed me out of their offices. Olivia blinked, recalibrating her understanding of him yet again. You weren't always rich? No, he confirmed, studying the simple menu with obvious familiarity. My parents died when I was 17. Insurance covered college, but not much else. I worked my way through MIT. I had no idea, she said softly. Few people do, he replied. It's not part of the official Nathaniel Sterling mythology. Their conversation flowed more naturally than she would have expected, touching on childhood memories, favorite books, and the peculiar joys of teaching young minds. For the first time, they were just Nate and Olivia, not CEO and employee, not investigator and client. Why teaching? He asked as they shared a slice of tiramisu. You could have done anything with your intelligence. Olivia smiled, twirling her fork thoughtfully. I believe education is how we change the world. One mind at a time. Noble, he observed, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. Says the man revolutionizing technology, she countered. Different approaches to the same goal, he suggested, making the world better than we found it. The evening passed in a haze of good food, better conversation, and a growing connection that neither could deny. Walking back to his car after dinner, Nate tentatively took her hand. The simple contact sent electricity through her veins. I don't want this investigation to end, he admitted quietly, selfish as that sounds. Because then you'll have to find a new special project consultant, she teased, though. Her heart raced. Because then I'll have no excuse to see you every day, he corrected, stopping to face her on the quiet street. Olivia, His phone rang, shattering the moment. The caller ID showed Madison's name. "It's happening," Madison said without preamble when he answered. "Vivian accessed the secure server 5 minutes ago. She's downloading the encryption files, the real ones, not the decoys." Nate's expression hardened. "Where?" "Still in the building," Madison replied. "R&D server room." "Call security," he ordered. "We're on our way." They arrived at Sterling Tower to find chaos. Security personnel converging on the server room, alarms blaring through the normally quiet evening building. Vivian stood surrounded by guards, her expression a mixture of defiance and contempt. "Why?" Nate demanded as they approached. "You've been with me for years. I trusted you." "You trusted me to be invisible," Vivian spat. "To manage your life, anticipate your needs, clean up your messes. Did you ever once consider promoting me? Including me in the projects I helped make possible? So you sold my work to the highest bidder?" Nate's voice was dangerously quiet. "I sold what should have been partly mine," she corrected. "Vertex recognized my value, even if you never did." As security led Vivian away, Olivia watched Nate's face, the betrayal evident in the tightness around his eyes, the rigid set of his shoulders. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "I'm sorry," she said simply. He covered her hand with his own. "I chose to be blind," he said heavily. "To trust the wrong person while pushing away everyone else." "Not everyone," she reminded him softly. His eyes found hers, vulnerability and hope warring in their depths. "No, not everyone." The aftermath unfolded with surprising swiftness. Vertex Corp's CEO, tipped off about the investigation, disavowed any knowledge of Vivian's activities, though the financial paper trail suggested otherwise. Sterling Innovation's quantum encryption project remained secure, its secrets protected. Madison Shaw received a substantial promotion and a public apology from Nate himself, an unprecedented act that transformed his reputation within the company overnight. And Olivia found herself facing a decision. "Your contract technically ends today," Nate pointed out 1 month after Vivian's arrest. They stood in his office, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows as evening descended. "The mole has been caught, the crisis averted." "So it has," she agreed, though sadness tinged her voice. These weeks had been the most challenging, exhilarating, and unexpectedly fulfilling of her professional life. And the personal connections, particularly with the complicated man standing before her, would be difficult to leave behind. "I have a proposition," Nate said, moving closer. "A new position, Director of Organizational Development." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously like a real job title." "It is," he confirmed with a smile. "Sterling Innovations needs someone who understands people, who can see patterns and possibilities others miss. Someone who isn't afraid to tell the CEO when he's being an arrogant jackass." "Tempting," she admitted. "But there's a complication." "What's that?" She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I've developed inappropriate feelings for my boss. It would be terribly unprofessional to continue working for him under those circumstances." Nate's breath caught. For a heartbeat, he remained perfectly still. Then he closed the distance between them, one hand gently cupping her cheek. "What if your boss has developed equally inappropriate feelings for you?" "That would be quite the conflict of interest," she murmured, her pulse racing as his lips hovered inches from hers. "Then, perhaps," he suggested, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine, "we should find a way to resolve the conflict while keeping the interest very much alive." "Any suggestions?" she whispered, already knowing the answer as his arms slipped around her waist, drawing her closer. "Just one," he replied, and finally, his lips found hers in a kiss that contained all the tension, all the connection, all the possibility that had been building between them. From that very first coffee-splattered encounter, when they finally broke apart, Breathless and smiling, Nate rested his forehead against hers. "For the record," he murmured, "this is not how I typically resolve cases of mistaken identity." Olivia laughed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Lucky for both of us, there was nothing typical about this case. 6 months later, at the launch party for Sterling Innovations' revolutionary quantum encryption technology, Olivia stood beside Nate as he addressed the crowd of investors, journalists, and employees. Her position as Director of Organizational Development had already transformed company culture, creating more transparency and collaboration across departments. "Success isn't built by individuals," Nate was saying, his hand finding hers discreetly, at the edge of the podium. "It's built by partnerships, by trust, by people brave enough to challenge our misconceptions and show us a better way forward." His eyes met hers, filled with a warmth that still made her heart skip. What had begun with a thrown coffee cup and a case of mistaken identity had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. A partnership of equals, a connection that transcended professional boundaries, and a love story that, like all the best ones, had caught them both completely by surprise. As applause filled the room, Nate leaned close to whisper in her ear, "Not bad for a billionaire with trust issues and a kindergarten teacher with an attitude problem." "We've come a long way," she agreed, squeezing his hand. "Though I still won't let you buy me designer dresses." "Stubborn woman," he murmured affectionately. "Arrogant man," she returned with equal fondness. And in that moment, surrounded by the success they'd built together, Olivia Carter and Nathaniel Sterling, the unlikely pair whose story began with the worst possible first impression, found themselves exactly where they were meant to be. Mistaken, identity transformed into perfect recognition, two people who saw each other clearly at last.